Hello everyone, Charles Watts here, the Arsenal correspondent at Goal, joining you on Friday. And what a disappointing Friday morning it is indeed. Of course, Arsenal going out of the Europa League last night on penalties to Sporting Lisbon in what was a pretty disastrous night at the Emirates. Pretty much everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. It wasn't fun. It was a bad night. As I said, pretty much everything that could have gone wrong did. I think when Arteta started that game, he would have thought, what things I want to avoid today: injuries, extra time, and he got them all. And on top of that, he got a very demoralising penalty shootout defeat as well. So he's going to have to lift the players up and try and do it within a couple of days and get them ready for Palace at the weekend, which is such a huge match on Sunday. So it was just a really tough night, a disappointing night. And it was just one that went against Arsenal. I have to admit, as it went on, you watched the game, I just felt like it was destined that Sporting were going to go through. I thought Arsenal started all right. They got in front. The second half, fair play to Sporting. I thought they were excellent. They came flying out. They had to. They needed to get back in the game. They came flying out. They were played with such intensity. Arsenal really struggled with it. Arsenal just a little bit off. They couldn't really clear their lines. They were giving the ball away, and that just invited Sporting on, and they played really well, Sporting. The goal was an absolute worldie. I mean, I've seen a few of those goals live now, those sort of halfway line type goals live. I'm not sure I've seen a better one than that. It was such a good hit. It was inch perfect. And that got Sporting level, and I thought they were deservedly level at that point. They could have gone on 1-0. Obviously, Marcus Edwards went through. Ramsdale made a good save to keep it at 1-1. Extra time, Arsenal were absolutely dominant. Sporting had lost their, they'd gone. Their legs had gone. They were just praying for penalties. They were desperately trying to get there. They were booting Arsenal up in the air to try and stop them. Arsenal had big chances and they didn't take them. Trossard went through 1-on-1. He hit the post. It was a good save, but should have scored. Gabriel had two big chances from set pieces. Didn't take them again. They were two very good saves. And as that extra time wore on, I have to admit, I sat there and I thought Sporting are going to win this on penalties. It had that feel to it. Just the way the game had started with the injuries to Tomiyasu, to Saliba. It just had that feel. You always get that impression during a game. You can feel when something's going to happen, and it just felt like Sporting were going to win that on penalties. Adan was obviously playing very well. He made some really big saves. His confidence was up. And my heart sank when it went to penalties. I have to admit, I did not feel confident Arsenal were going to go through. And that's what happened. I mean, Sporting even won the toss and had the penalties down at the clock end by their fans. They took the first penalty. It's just, pretty much everything went against Arsenal. Their performance wasn't great by any means. I'm not using excuses, but they could have played better. They should have played better. They gave the ball away so many times in that second half. When Sporting came out, played with such intensity, Arsenal struggled to deal with it, and they just lost their shape. They just struggled to keep the ball. Mikel Arteta was speaking about it afterwards in terms of the way they just kept turning over possession, giving it back to Sporting. That invited them on, and it's a once in a lifetime goal from Goncalves. It was such a good strike. I said I've seen so many of those goals in real time live, and not so many. I've seen a fair few of them, and that's the best one I've seen. I think it was just so perfect. The strike was so perfect. The way it dropped under the bar over at Ramsdale's hand, it was inch perfect. The whole thing. Fair play to him. It was a once in a lifetime goal, and it just kind of summed up Arsenal's night. Like Mikel said, a huge blow. We really wanted to go through. We tried for 120 minutes, and the penalties, it wasn't enough. The game started difficult for us. Obviously, we lost Tommy early on. We lost Saliba. That really left us in a difficult in-game management. We only had one window to make the subs after that, and a few players could not play the 90 minutes. But still, we didn't find our rhythm or our flow. We've allowed too many spaces. We're late and didn't win enough duels. We gave the ball away many, many times. The last 20 minutes, we got the flow, we got the momentum, we got into final third and created big chances, and we didn't score. Then it came to penalties. It's a lottery, and it didn't come our way. And that's another thing I haven't mentioned in terms of just how things went against Arsenal. Those injuries that really impacted the changes that Arteta could make, because you're only allowed 3 windows to make the substitutes. Obviously, you used 2 of those separately in the first half because of defender injuries, so you've only basically got 1 left. That means he had to bring Gabriel Jesus off at half time because that was a window you could do it. He had to take Jesus off at half time, which he didn't really want. He wanted to get 60 minutes out of Jesus, but he had to do that because that still meant he had one more window to make a sub in the second half, which he eventually did. And just everything was disrupted. It was just a bad night. It was a bad night. And unfortunately, Arsenal are out of the Europa League. I was talking to a couple of guys on the way home on the train. I didn't get your names, sorry if you're watching this. I didn't get your names, but you certainly made the journey home more enjoyable, so thanks for that. And we were talking about just Europa League. I'm so glad to see the back of it in a way. it's been such a horrible competition for Arsenal since they've got in it. You felt at the time when they dropped out of the Champions League 5 years ago, you thought, they've got a good chance of winning this Europa League. But it's been really evil to them, this competition. Losing in the final, losing in 2 semi-finals, the defeat against Olympiacos, the defeat last night, it's just not been much fun, is it? So glad, touch wood, whatever happens between now and the season, Arsenal are going to be able to get rid of this competition for a while and just focus on the Champions League next season. It's going to be so nice not to hear that music anymore. Having said that, I'm really disappointed they went out. And 100% in my view, Arsenal got a better chance of winning the Premier League now that they're out of the Europa League. So there is that plus point, and I think that's undeniable. The fact Arsenal now are just going to be able to concentrate pretty much on weekend to weekend. Man City are going to have Champions League games in midweek. It's going to be much easier for Arsenal to handle and manage the squad because of that. So I'm absolutely convinced they've got a better chance of winning the Premier League now that they're out of the Europa League. But having said that, I'm not happy they're out of the Europa League because I still feel like they could have won both competitions. So it's not me saying, who cares? I'm happy they're out. I'm not. I really wanted Arsenal to stay in, and the players wanted to stay in. Arteta wanted to stay in. You could sense the disappointment afterwards. You could see the disappointment afterwards. They were gutted they didn't go through. So I don't buy into this whole, screw the Europa League. We're glad we're out. I don't feel like that is a sense at Arsenal. I think it's definitely boosted their chances of winning the Premier League, as I said, 100%. But that is not saying that I'm happy they're out by any means. Mikel said the disappointment is not going to go away. The disappointment is there, but this does bring clarity. There are 11 games to play now, 11 Premier League games, and we have a final against Crystal Palace this weekend. We have to recover all the energy there and put all our focus into it and play better than we did today. Play better and win. He was asked, is this defeat a blessing in disguise in terms of Arsenal's title chances? He says, I cannot see it that way today. I don't know. If you go through the competition and win it, it's magnificent. If it's not, then it affects your plans in the league. That's a different story. We wanted to go through. We put everything into it. The effort the boys put in when we weren't at our best individually and collectively. We need to put our heads up, look towards Palace. It's 11 games left. The first one starts on Saturday. I think Arteta's right there when he says, if you go through the competition and win it, it's magnificent. If you don't, then it affects your plans in the league. There's just no denying that. It's hard. Arsenal don't have the biggest squad. We know that. We've seen now, what this game on its, take this game as a kind of microcosm of the whole thing. You play Europa League on Thursday night, you lose 2 players to injury, you've got barely any turnaround ahead of the game against Crystal Palace on Sunday. That was something Arsenal are going to have to deal with the whole way through to the end of the competition had they stay in it. If you win it, that doesn't really matter because you win it at the end of the day. You get your hands on the trophy, it's fantastic. But if you don't, and there's a good chance you don't because there's other teams in it, obviously, who can win. We saw that last night, for example. Then it does impact your plans on the league. So, look, it's disappointing. 100% it's disappointing. But the only plus side on it is it definitely helps Arsenal's chances of winning the league. I'm 100% convinced of that, I have to say. The players were down afterwards. You could tell they were down afterwards. You could see they were down. Obviously, Martinelli missed a crucial penalty. He was clearly down. I said to Mikel, I asked him in the press conference, I was like, what was the message at full time now? How do you pick the players up? What did you tell them after the game? And he said, just that we're all disappointed and we have to look at ourselves. There are things we have to do better to have bigger margins to win the game and not rely on the last 20 minutes or extra time or a penalty shootout to go through in the competition. Now there are 11 games to play and that's the only focus that we have, and everybody's thinking about that one thing, and that's Palace and being in the best mental and physical condition. A lot of clarity and all the energy is there for Sunday. He kept using the word clarity, and I think that was an important thing after the game. Arsenal know what they have to do now. There's nothing to cloud their judgment. There's nothing else to think about. It is just purely Premier League. There is just a clarity now to the whole season. It's just 11 games to go. Nothing else. That is all the focus is on now. Just 11 Premier League games. Nothing else to cloud your judgment. And that was a word that he used lots and lots of times in the press conference yesterday. Clarity. And it is. We know what's left now. That is it. Nothing else but 11 Premier League games. I think it was interesting. We said we have to do better to have bigger margins to win the game. I think he's talking about taking chances there because Arsenal had plenty of chances to win this game, and we've seen it a lot. I think certainly, I don't think yesterday's game was out of character with a lot of what we've seen from Arsenal in recent weeks. They're not playing at their best. Take the Fulham game. I think they've had some control in matches, but not loads of control in matches. Fulham game, they had control, which was great. Leicester game, they had control, but there was never a big margin. So there was always that little bit of nervousness that Leicester could come back into it, even though Arsenal were totally dominant in that game. You've got to do what you did at Fulham. You've got to do what you did against Everton. You need to get a bigger margin, so it's not all about drama. It's not all about going into the last 20 minutes, 30 minutes. You've got to manage games better. You've got to take your chances, and then that gives yourselves the chance to do what you did at Fulham at the weekend, which was basically, playing second gear for the second half because the match was over. That's something Arsenal definitely need to work on. And I've seen in recent performances, certainly since January, basically, there's a bit of a theme on the majority of Arsenal's performances at the moment, and it's always seemed to be a bit of jeopardy by the end because they haven't been able to manage to kill games off. You go back to the United game, needed a last minute winner. Villa game needed a last minute winner. Bournemouth game needed a last minute winner. You need more of the Fulham games rather than these mad chaotic games or the games last night where it goes right to the final whistle or to penalties, in fact. So yeah, I can see what Arteta's talking about there. Obviously the injuries were bad, were disappointing. Tomiyasu's one looks serious. We don't know yet. Mikel spoke about it afterwards. We asked him about it. He said Tomiyasu looks pretty serious for his reaction straight away and what he said to me. Obviously, it's very early and it's difficult to know. William, I don't know. He had some discomfort and could not carry on, so we have to take him off. Now, I wasn't down in the mix zone afterwards yesterday because I was doing a press conference, but some of my colleagues were down in the mix zone. Simon Collins at the Standard was down there trying to talk to some of the players, and they all saw Tomiyasu walk out. He didn't stop and talk, but you saw him walk out. He was on crutches, so that's clearly not a good sign. And you could see from this replay, it looked a nasty one. He got his legs caught, he stretched. It just looked nasty. I'd be surprised if Tomiyasu's back quickly from that. We'll have to wait and see, how significant the injury is, but it didn't look good. And the fact he's on crutches, obviously, didn't look good. Saliba did go through as well, and he looked, and again, I wasn't there, but Simon at the Standard was there, and he said that Saliba looked okay. He looked perfectly fine as he walked off. There wasn't crutches like Tomiyasu or anything. He just walked through normally. So that's potentially a good sign. Hopefully, Arsenal, it was just more of a sort of precaution thing with Saliba. It seemed like he was holding his back a little bit, so maybe he had a little bit of a twinge, and Arsenal didn't want to take any risks, and he couldn't continue. And hopefully, he's fit. I think that's the crucial one. Tomiyasu, you can kind of think Arsenal can get by without Tommy, providing Ben White stays fit. And the fact they're not in the Europa League, so they're only going to be playing weekend to weekend, that's going to make it a lot easier to keep players fit because you don't have the extra workload on the game. So if White can stay fit, you kind of feel like Arsenal can manage without Tomiyasu. Saliba's the crucial one. They need William Saliba. You do not want to be breaking up that partnership of Gabriel and Saliba now, especially with so many crucial games coming up, crucial away games coming up after the international break. So that's what I think everyone is going to have their fingers crossed, waiting to hear the news on Saliba. And there is no press conference ahead of the game against Palace at the weekend now because Mikel did a bit of press after the game last night, so they're not doing anything with us newspaper guys before the match. I don't know if Sky might go down there. They might have a bit of, because they're rights holders, they might have a little sit down with Mikel, so we might get some fresh quotes from him before the game against Palace. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. But yeah, Saliba's the crucial one. Jesus, that was pre-planned. I think he came off a little bit early because of the substitution windows. But, it was really good to see him get 45 minutes. There's another step forward for him. I thought he looked really, really sharp in that first half as well, which was very, very encouraging. Whether he starts against Palace at the weekend, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But certainly a good sign that he got 45 minutes under his belt. Player ratings I'm going to give just before I go now, actually quickly, but I'm sure you've probably seen Patrick Vieira has been sacked. So Crystal Palace haven't got a manager at the moment ahead of Sunday's game. Whether they're going to have a temporary manager in charge, you would think it's probably likely for the game because they might not have an appointment in place ahead of Sunday. So it could well be a temporary manager, a caretaker manager, maybe their under-18s manager at the moment. But Patrick Vieira won't be returning to Arsenal at the weekend because he has been sacked, which is a little bit unfortunate. I think they've been on a terrible run this year, but they're still 12th in the Premier League. It's not disaster for Crystal Palace. I think maybe it's a little bit harsh, but clearly they felt they needed to take action. Okay, so player ratings before I go. Obviously, not many. They weren't great from last night. Ramsdale, I gave a 6. I mean, no goalkeeper wants to be lobbed from the halfway line, but I do think it was just a brilliant, opportunistic finish from the Sporting guy. So fair play to him. Made a big save, Ramsdale, to deny Edwards in the towards the end, which would have been 2-1 Sporting. So fair play. I gave him a 6. Tomiyasu and Saliba I didn't give marks to because of the injuries. Gabriel, I gave a 6. I thought he he really struggled early on in the second half. I don't know if he had a bit of an injury, a bit of a knock. He seemed like he might have done, but I thought he really improved as the game wore on. And in extra time, he was quite a big presence. I gave him a 6. Zinchenko, I gave a 5. Jorginho, I gave a 5. He struggled. I thought it was a brilliant pass from Jorginho in the build-up for the Xhaka's goal to let Martinelli away. But I thought he struggled a little bit after that. I gave him a 5. Xhaka a 6. Vieira, I gave a 3. I thought Vieira had a shocker. Got worse as the game went on as well. I don't know if it's just complete lack of confidence after a few things didn't work out for him. But yeah, he had a really poor night. And it was a big opportunity for him with Odegaard not there, not starting. It was a big chance for Vieira to kind of stamp his authority on a game in a creative point of view, and he just didn't do it. I thought it was a poor performance. He got 3. Nelson, non-existent really. He got 4. Jesus, I gave 7. I thought he was really lively, unlucky not to score. I think it was a real bright spark in that first half for Arsenal. Martinelli, I gave a 5. The subs, quite a lot of them came on. I gave White a 6. Holding, I gave a 6. Mixed bag for Holding, made a couple of really crucial blocks, but he was a bit poor in possession. Gave him a 6. Trossard 6. Saka 5. Partey 6. Odegaard, I gave a 7. Arsenal looked so much better when Odegaard came on. Made such a big difference. As you know, we know he does. He's such an important player. And so yeah, those are my player ratings. Jesus, I suppose I'm going to give man of the match just because he was the only one who started, who I gave a 7 to, which I think sums up the performance as a whole for Arsenal. Just not good enough. Disappointing day, disappointing defeat. But as everyone's been saying, as Arteta's been saying, as Martin Odegaard said afterwards, 11 cup finals to go. Win against Palace on Sunday, and this defeat, you know, maybe not totally forgotten, but will certainly be put to bed for now anyway. So thanks for watching, everyone. Anything you've agreed with, disagreed with, let me know in the comments below. Always will want to get your opinions. Again, thanks so much for the nice messages about the book yesterday. Appreciate that. And look, have a great weekend. I'll speak to you soon.